The afternoon sun stood softly on the tiled floor of Heaven's Delight Eatery, a high-end restaurant on Nwanchukwu Street, Enugu. Inside, air conditioners hummed low, blending with soft Igbo highlife music floating from hidden ceiling speakers. Waiters in neatly pressed aprons moved swiftly between polished tables, serving plates of jollof rice, sizzling goat meat, and fruit-topped parfaits. The laughter of well-dressed customers echoed lightly in the air. Businessmen in suits, ladies with painted nails, children in designer shoes. All was perfect. Until the glass door creaked open. At first, no one turned. But then the smell of dust, sweat, and something old slipped into the cool air. Heads turned, eyebrows lifted. A woman had stepped inside, barefoot. Her name was Mama Folake. Her wrapper was faded to almost gray. Her blouse hung off one shoulder, revealing fragile, sun-darkened skin. Her ankles were swollen, her feet cracked from years of walking without shoes. In one shaking hand, she held a black nylon bag, the kind you get from a roadside suya stand. She clutched it to her chest like treasure. See, a waiter standing by the POS leaned to another, whispering, "Who allowed this woman inside?" "I no, the second one replied, lips twisting. "Maybe she come beg." Mama Folake didn't look at them. She walked forward, slow and careful, like every step was borrowed. Her eyes didn't scan the room. She looked down, at the shiny tiles, the skirts that brushed past her legs, the expensive shoes near her cracked toes. A couple seated near the entrance pulled their plates slightly closer. A girl with an iPhone whispered, "Is this a joke in Heaven's Delight?" But Mama Folake kept walking. She reached the counter and stood quietly. The man behind it was tall and clean-shaven, wearing a white shirt tucked into navy blue trousers. His name tag read, Tony Obasi Manager. He looked her over once, from her dusty toes to her bent shoulders. Then he clicked his tongue. "What do you want, Mama?" he asked flatly. She bowed slightly. Her voice was like dried leaves. "Good afternoon, sir. I haven't eaten since yesterday. I'm not asking for much. If you have anything left over, maybe bones, I'll be grateful." Silence fell near the counter. A teenage boy chuckled. Another guest raised their phone, pretending to scroll but recording. Manager Tony gave a cold laugh. "Leftover? This is not a dustbin. This is a top restaurant. Mama, Abeg, carry your wahala and go outside." Mama Folake swallowed hard. She clutched her nylon bag tighter. Her lips trembled, but she did not move. "I don't want to beg," she whispered. "I just a little something, even if no water and Iba." Tony raised his voice. "You dey hear English? This place is for paying customers. Leave before you scare away business." Laughter. Mocking glances. Even a waiter bit his lip, trying not to smile. But somewhere in the corner of the restaurant, seated quietly in a soft gold dress, was Dr. Ifeoma. She had just returned from the UK after 9 years. She came to Nigeria for rest and reconnection. Her plate of food remained untouched. Her eyes were locked on the old woman. Something in Mama Folake's walk, her voice, and then her necklace. A dull copper chain with a pendant shaped like an ancient uli symbol. Ifeoma's breath caught. She had seen that necklace before. On someone she once called sister. She reached into her bag. Her fingers trembled. The laughter in the room continued, but something deeper had just been awakened. Not everyone could see it yet, but a door had quietly opened. A story was about to unfold that would shake the foundation of everyone watching. And it had all begun with a woman who came for leftovers. The room hadn't yet realized it was holding its breath. Mama Folake still stood at the counter, her hands trembling against the black nylon bag pressed to her chest. Her stomach growled audibly now. But it wasn't just hunger that weakened her. It was the sting of humiliation. The air felt thicker. Her knees shook. Manager Tony folded his arms and scoffed. Mama, Abi, you know to hear? This is your last warning. Enough. The voice was soft, but it carried. Chairs shifted as heads turned toward the corner of the restaurant. Dr. Ifeoma Mbia stood calmly, tall and poised, her soft gold dress falling around her ankles like a quiet river. Her pink painted fingers tightened around her purse strap. Tony blinked. Excuse me? Ifeoma took a step forward. Her heels clicked against the tiles, echoing louder than the music playing in the background. I asked if I heard you insult this woman for being hungry? Madam, Tony stammered, caught off guard. This is not a place for drama. The woman came to beg. And because of that, Ifeoma's voice was firmer now, you decided to humiliate her in front of everyone? The room went quiet. Forks paused mid-air. A mother stopped feeding her toddler, some phones now recorded openly. Tony straightened. Madam, please, don't cause problem here. If you like her so much, you can take her home. I just might, Ifeoma cut in sharply, because clearly, kindness is not on the menu here. She turned slowly, addressing the entire restaurant. Is this who we've become? We mock our elders in public now? We record their pain instead of easing it? A young woman near the door whispered, This is too much. That woman could be our mother. A man in white caftan nodded slowly. She fit born any of us here. Tony's confidence faltered. He looked around. Customers weren't laughing anymore. The judgment had shifted. Now it pointed at him. Ifeoma turned to Mama Folake, her voice gentler now. Mama, please come with me. The old woman blinked. She hadn't spoken since Tony's outburst. Her eyes were glassy, confused, tired. Come, Ifeoma said again, offering her hand. You'll eat with me today. Mama Folake hesitated, then reached out, shaking fingers touching soft, warm strength. They walked together to Ifeoma's table. Tony tried one last time. Madam, I beg, don't let this disrupt the restaurant. Ifeoma didn't even look at him. I know the owner of this place, Manager Tony, she said calmly. If I make one call, your uniform will be folded before evening. Tony froze. A waiter nearby quietly disappeared into the kitchen. Meanwhile, Ifeoma signaled another server. Please, bring a full plate of jollof rice, goat meat, plantain, and a cold bottle of malt. Her voice didn't rise, but it rang with the authority of someone used to being listened to. Mama Folake sat slowly, her back still bent, her hand still gripping the nylon bag. Ifeoma sat across from her, silent for a few seconds. Then her eyes drifted again to the dull copper necklace hanging around the old woman's neck. Her heart skipped. That pendant, it wasn't just familiar, it was personal. A face from the past, full of laughter and life, flickered in her memory. She leaned in gently. Mama, she said softly, that necklace, where did you get it? Mama Folake looked down and touched the pendant. Her fingers trembled. My daughter, she whispered. It was hers. Ifeoma's breath caught. Her hands reached slowly into her bag. And the past came knocking. The food arrived on a silver tray, steaming jollof rice with fried goat meat, dodo slices golden and crisp, coleslaw on the side. A chilled bottle of malt water glistened with condensation. The waiter, now humble, placed the plate in front of Mama Folake and stepped back silently. But the old woman wasn't looking at the food. Her eyes were on the small object hanging from her neck, the dull copper pendant she had just said belonged to her daughter. Dr. Ifeoma Mbia felt her fingers go numb. The room had grown quieter, though the music still played. She reached into her bag and pulled out something she hadn't touched in years. A photograph. Old and worn. Its edges curled, its color faded. But the faces in it, bright-eyed girls in school uniforms, still glowed. She slid it gently across the table. Mama, please, do you recognize this girl? Mama Folake took the photo in her thin fingers. Her eyes, though dim with age, locked onto the familiar face. She gasped softly. Her hands began to shake. She placed the photo on the table, laid both palms over it, and closed her eyes. This is her, she whispered. My daughter, my Amaka. Ifeoma's heart twisted. She nodded slowly. She was my best friend, my sister in every way that mattered. Mama Folake looked up at her. Her lips trembled. You knew my Amaka? Yes, Ifeoma said, voice cracking. We met in community girls' secondary school in Suka. We studied together, cried together, survived together. She told me everything about your tailoring business, your struggles, how you raised her alone after your husband died. Tears rolled down the old woman's face. Quiet, steady tears that carried a weight years old. I thought, she died alone. I didn't even know who was with her. She wasn't alone, Ifeoma said, voice breaking now. She had me. We fought together until her last breath. She gave me this photo and told me to find you. Mama Folake's fingers pressed harder against the picture. She bowed her head. I prayed every day that someone would remember her. I never forgot, Ifeoma said, tears now falling freely. I was just too far. Too late. They reached across the table and held hands. 2 generations joined by grief, by memory, by the love of a woman now gone but never forgotten. Customers watched in silence. No one mocked, no one filmed. It was no longer a scene. It was something sacred. Mama Folake took a shaky breath. When she died, I lost everything. I couldn't work, couldn't afford rent. I had to leave in Suka. I came to Enugu to start afresh, but age caught up with me. Ifeoma nodded. And yet you survived. I had no choice, she whispered. I carry her with me every day. And now, Ifeoma replied, holding her gaze, you won't carry that pain alone anymore. They sat in silence, hands locked over a wrinkled photograph and the necklace that started it all. The food remained untouched for a while, because what was shared in that moment was more filling than any meal. Outside, the sun shifted slightly in the sky. And inside heaven's delight, the hearts of strangers beat with the soft echo of reunion. By the time Mama Folake took her first spoonful of food, the sun had begun its slow descent over Enugu. Warm rays slipped through the restaurant's glass walls, landing gently on the copper pendant resting against her chest. She chewed slowly, almost unsure. Her hands still trembled, but her heart had begun to thaw. Dr. Ifeoma Mba watched her quietly. She didn't speak. She didn't rush her. She only reached out now and then to refill her water or pass the tissue. After a few minutes, Mama Folake looked up with tear-glazed eyes. I can't believe I'm eating this, that I'm sitting here, that someone sees me again. Ifeoma smiled gently. You were never invisible. You were just waiting for the right eyes to find you. Mama Folake covered her face with one hand. Her voice cracked. God must have heard Amaka's prayers. Because I gave up. I gave up so long ago. Ifeoma leaned in. Mama, your daughter gave me everything when I had nothing. She didn't just feed me, she covered me, encouraged me, helped me through school. When I got the scholarship to go abroad, I almost turned it down. She paused, her eyes softening. But she wouldn't let me. She used her late father's gratuity, money she had waited years to get, to pay for my visa, my passport, and even my flight ticket. Mama Folake gasped. Her hand flew to her chest. She never told me. She said, Ifeoma continued, God wouldn't open a door he didn't plan to walk me through. She made me promise. When you find my mama, take care of her. Let her know I didn't forget her. And now, years later, sitting across from the woman who gave the world Amaka, that promise was being fulfilled. Mama Folake wiped her eyes with the hem of her wrapper. Amaka was light, she whispered. Even in her sickness, she shined. She still shines, Ifeoma said, her voice now heavy with emotion. Through you, through me, through this moment. At that table, the ghosts of the past settled into peace. Two women, one shaped by survival, the other by gratitude, sat like long-lost family, finally reunited. Suddenly, a sharp voice interrupted. Manager Tony Obasi had returned. He stood a few feet away, arms folded tightly, clearly boiling. "Madam," he began loudly, "you've made your point, but this woman is disturbing my restaurant's image. This is not a soup kitchen." Ifeoma didn't even turn to look at him. Her voice came slow, icy. "Keep talking, Mr. Obasi. You're about 3 words away from making headlines, and I promise, you won't like what the world reads." He hesitated, then scoffed. "You think you can threaten me?" "I don't need to threaten you," she replied, finally turning to meet his glare. "The internet will do that for me." A young woman at a nearby table, quietly filming the whole scene, nodded. The man in the white caftan tapped his phone. "Too late," he murmured. "It's already trending." Tony's face paled, his arrogance faltered, and for the first time that day, he felt what it meant to be small. Ifeoma turned back to Mama Folake. "You deserve more than this," she said softly. "More than bones, more than pity. You deserve dignity, comfort, joy." Mama Folake looked at her with trembling lips. "I have no one else, my daughter. You are all I have now." Ifeoma smiled, this time with a strength deeper than tears. "Then you have more than enough." 3 days after the incident at Heaven's Delight Eatery, the dusty street of New Artisan Estate stirred with curiosity. A silver SUV pulled up quietly in front of a freshly painted bungalow. The house stood modest but beautiful, painted soft cream, trimmed with dark green edges. 2 palm trees swayed on either side of the small fenced compound. Inside the car, Dr. Ifeoma Imba sat beside a woman who hadn't known peace in years. Mama Folake wore a clean blue wrapper and a simple white blouse. Her feet were now in new rubber sandals. Her once brittle hair had been neatly plaited, but it was her eyes, clearer, calmer, no longer weighed down by hunger or humiliation, that told the real story. Ifeoma stepped out first, walked around, and opened the passenger door. "Mama," she said gently, offering her hand, "come. This is your new home." Mama Folake stared at the bungalow, her lips parted in disbelief. "Home?" she echoed, as if testing the word on her tongue. "Yes, Mama. Yours. Completely." She rose slowly from the car, gripping Ifeoma's hand like a child taking her first steps. They walked to the front door. The keys jangled in Ifeoma's hand before she opened it and stepped aside. Inside, the air smelled of new paint and lavender. The floor was tiled. Curtains swayed softly in the breeze from an open window. The living room had a soft beige couch, a wooden center table, and a TV mounted on the wall. A picture frame already hung above the shelf. Amaka's faded school photo, lovingly framed. Mama Folake stepped in and froze. Her mouth moved, but no words came out. There were 2 bedrooms. One was hers, with a plush foam mattress, a wooden wardrobe, and soft light from a bedside lamp. The second was for a guest, or the helper Ifeoma had mentioned. A few moments later, Peace Ukena, a kind-eyed young woman in her 20s, walked in holding a grocery bag. "Good afternoon, Mama," she said with a wide smile. "I'll be staying here with you, helping out, cooking, cleaning, keeping you company." Still, Mama Folake didn't speak. She stood in the middle of her sitting room, one hand over her heart, one on the copper pendant around her neck. Then, suddenly, the tears came. She wept, not the tears of hunger or shame, but the deep sobs of someone who had wandered too long and finally found a place to rest. Ifeoma wrapped her arms around her and whispered, "No more begging, Mama. No more walking the streets. No more empty nights. You are safe now." Later that evening, the sun began to set, casting golden light across the compound. Birds chirped softly from a nearby tree. Inside, Mama Folake sat on the sofa, sipping warm tea, while Ifeoma unpacked books onto a shelf. She looked around the room again, her eyes resting on the curtain, the rug, the framed photo. "Ifeoma," she said quietly, "why are you doing all this for me?" Ifeoma paused and walked over to her. "Because Amaka would have done it for my mother if the roles were reversed." She knelt beside her and placed her head gently on Mama Folake's lap. "Because you gave the world a gift, and I was lucky enough to receive it. This, all of this, is me trying to give something back." Mama Folake stroked her hair, tears falling silently again. "May God bless you, my daughter. May you never lack. May your own children never feel hunger or shame." And in that house, with cream walls, a woman once forgotten by the world began to live again. Far away from the quiet peace of New Artisan Estate, Enugu's digital streets buzzed with a different kind of energy. On the 5th day after the incident, a post began to circulate across Facebook, X, Twitter, and Instagram. It was written by a young woman named Adizi, who had been seated near the restaurant door that fateful day. She had watched it all, the humiliation, the laughter, the moment Dr. Ifeoma Mba stood up. Her post read, "Something happened last week at Heaven's Delight Eatery that broke me. A hungry old woman came in barefoot, asking for leftovers. The manager mocked her, called her a beggar, told her to leave. But then, a woman in a gold dress stood up. What happened next reminded me that not everyone has lost their soul." She didn't mention names, but in the comments, people did. Dozens tagged the restaurant. Hundreds shared the story. Within 2 days, it had over 10,000 shares. By the 3rd day, it was trending with hashtags like #RespectElders, #HeavenWithoutCompassion, and #WhoIsThisManager. And by the 4th day, the owner of Heaven's Delight herself, Madame Awela Nduka, received a message from her daughter abroad. "Mom, you're trending for the wrong reason. Check the internet." At first, Madame Awel thought it was a joke, but when she opened the post and read the comments, her face turned pale. "Is this the restaurant that mocks the poor? Fire that heartless manager? God bless the woman who stood up for that mother." Shame washed over her. Her restaurant had always been her pride, a symbol of excellence and dignity, but now her brand was being dragged through digital mud. She didn't waste time. She picked up the phone and called her head supervisor. "Tell Tony Obasi not to return. His employment ends today. Pack his things. Send him his envelope." The next morning, Tony walked into Heaven's Delight with his usual swagger, but something was off. His name tag was gone from the counter. His locker was empty. A white envelope lay silently on the front desk. He opened it. Inside was a single note. "You no longer work here. Management." Tony froze. For a moment, he just stood there, stunned. The staff didn't greet him. The new shift supervisor nodded once and walked past him. There were no goodbyes, no pity. Because the world had already seen what he did, and now he had to live with it. Back in New Artisan Estate, Mama Folake sat in her living room, reading a book Peace had helped her borrow from the community library. The doorbell rang, and Ifeoma walked in, carrying a basket of fresh fruits. She greeted Mama Folake with a kiss on the forehead. "How are you today, Mama?" "I woke up with peace," she replied, smiling. "More than I've had in years." They sat together by the window. Sunlight filtered in gently through the curtains. Peace came in moments later with a tray, hot okra soup and soft pounded yam. Ifeoma leaned back in her chair and whispered, "Mama, there's something I still need to tell you." Mama Folake looked up. "What is it, my daughter?" Ifeoma paused, took a breath, and prepared to open a door she'd kept locked for years. The okra soup on the tray steamed with a gentle aroma of ogiri and uziza. Peace excused herself, leaving Mama Folake and Dr. Ifeoma Emba alone in the soft quiet of the sitting room. Outside, the birds sang. A tree branch tapped lightly against the window. Ifeoma sat still, hands folded tightly in her lap. "Mama," she said slowly, "there's something I've never told anyone, and I think it's time you knew." Mama Folake turned fully toward her, the warmth in her eyes replacing any fear. "Talk to me, my daughter." Ifeoma exhaled, her voice soft but trembling. "I'm an orphan, Mama. I lost both my parents when I was barely a teenager. One to a car accident, the other to stroke. Everything changed after that." A long silence stretched between them. "I had no uncles who cared, no aunties that stayed. I became my own parent. After school each day, I would hawk ground nuts, wash clothes, clean hair salons, and still study late into the night by candlelight." Mama Folake's eyes filled again. "My God!" "But in the middle of that darkness," Ifeoma continued, "your daughter appeared." She smiled through her tears. "Amaka didn't just give me food. She gave me dignity. She never let me feel less. She would give me her lunch, help me study, and even sneak pads into my bag when I had nothing." Mama Folake put a trembling hand on hers. "She never told me how much she was giving others," she whispered. "She always just said, 'I'm managing.'" "One day," Ifeoma said, voice shaking, "I got a scholarship to study in the UK, but I laughed when I saw the letter. It felt like a cruel joke. How could I fly abroad when I couldn't afford toothpaste?" She laughed bitterly, wiping her face. "But when I told Amaka, she clapped her hands and jumped like I had already gone. I told her, 'Please don't give me false hope. Let's be realistic.' And you know what she said?" Mama Folake nodded gently, her throat tight. She said, "God wouldn't bring you this far to abandon you. He has a ticket waiting somewhere. We just have to find it." Ifeoma's tears rolled again. A week later she came running. She said the gratuity her mother had been fighting for finally paid out. She gave me money for everything. Passport, visa, even clothes. And all I had to do was promise her one thing. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded slip of paper. The writing was old, faint, but clear. "If you ever find my mother, Ifeoma, take care of her. Tell her I love her. Tell her I never forgot." Mama Folake took the note with shaking hands. She read it once, then twice, then held it against her chest. The tears came in waves, rivers of both grief and gratitude. Her shoulders shook, her lips parted, but no sound came out except a soft, broken "Amaka." Ifeoma dropped to her knees and placed her head in Mama Folake's lap. "I couldn't save her, Mama. I was with her until the end, but I couldn't save her." Mama Folake stroked her hair with trembling fingers. "You did more than enough. You were her sister, her angel." They stayed like that, two broken halves of a once whole story, reunited by a memory, healed by a promise. Ifeoma looked up again, her eyes firm now. "As long as I live, Mama, you'll never lack anything. I can't bring Amaka back, but I can honor her every day." Mama Folake nodded, her voice finally steady. "And you already are, my daughter. You already are." Weeks passed. The quiet bungalow in New Artisan Estate began to carry new sounds. Laughter, humming, the shuffle of slippers on tiled floors, the boiling of tea, and the soft clicking of TV remotes. Mama Folake had begun to glow again. Her cheeks were fuller, her steps steadier, her wrapper always clean, and each morning, Peace would comb her hair and sit with her on the veranda while they shared pop and akara. But this day felt different. In the early evening, Dr. Ifeoma Emba arrived, carrying 2 hot flasks, a bag of fruits, and her tablet. "Mama," she called, stepping inside. Mama Folake was already waiting in the sitting room, wearing a soft lilac blouse and a head tie that made her look 10 years younger. Ifeoma placed the flasks on the table and handed her the bag. I brought ugu leaves, mangoes, and fresh corn. You mentioned them last week. Mama Folake chuckled. I only mentioned them once. You've turned into my mind reader. They both laughed. Then Ifeoma pulled out her tablet. There's someone I want you to meet. She tapped the screen and turned it around. On it was a video call. 2 children, both under 10, waved excitedly from abroad. Grandma Folake! They shouted in unison. Mama Folake gasped. Her hand flew to her chest. Is this real? Yes, Mama, Ifeoma smiled. These are my children, Zara and Munachi. The kids giggled. Mummy told us about you. We saw your picture. You're so beautiful. Mama Folake began to cry again, but these tears were of joy. God bless you, she whispered. God bless you, my grandchildren. And this, Ifeoma added, turning the screen slightly, is my husband. He works in tech in the UK. A smiling man appeared. He greeted respectfully. It's an honor to finally meet you, Ma. Later that night, after dinner and prayers, they sat outside watching the stars. A gentle breeze passed. I still don't understand how God found me, Mama Folake said softly. Ifeoma replied without hesitation. You were never lost, Mama. You were only waiting to be seen. Peace brought out warm towels and tea, then disappeared inside. Mama, Ifeoma said after a pause, can I ask you something? Of course, my child. When I have time, maybe every few weeks, can I bring women from the community to sit with you? Young girls who feel like giving up. I want them to hear your story. Mama Folake was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. If it will give them hope, I will sit with them as many times as you need. A silence fell, warm, not heavy. Ifeoma reached for the old necklace still hanging around the woman's neck. I've thought of replacing this, she said, but every time I try, I can't. It feels like it belongs right there. Mama Folake smiled. It's not jewelry, it's a memory. And a map, Ifeoma added, her eyes shining. It brought me home. They sat side by side, the younger woman resting her head on the older woman's shoulder. In the quiet, under the stars of Enugu, they weren't doctor and widow. They were family. Not born, but chosen. It had been exactly 3 weeks since Mama Folake walked barefoot into Heaven's Delight eatery, carrying nothing but a black nylon bag, dry lips, and a prayer for scraps. But now, she sat in her own home, in a comfortable armchair, dressed in clean clothes, with scented shea butter rubbed gently on her feet every night by Peace. She had stopped counting the days, because what mattered now was life, new, gentle, restored. But the world hadn't forgotten. One Monday morning, a knock came at the gate. Peace answered, and moments later, Adaza, the young woman who wrote the viral post, stepped into the sitting room. She wore jeans and a lemon blouse, carrying a DSLR camera and a notebook. She bowed deeply. Good afternoon, Mama. Good afternoon, Doctor. Ifeoma smiled. You're welcome, Adaza. I wanted to ask. With your permission, Adizi continued, can I document your story, Mama? Not just the restaurant part, but everything. Your life, your strength, your daughter's legacy. Mama Folake looked surprised. My story? Yes, Ma, Adizi nodded. The world should know who you really are. Not just the woman who was laughed at, but the woman who raised Amaka, who survived loss, who still carries light. Mama Folake was quiet for a moment, then she nodded. If it will help someone, yes, let them hear it. And so the story began again. Adiza's post turned into a mini-documentary, titled, The Woman They Laughed At, A Lesson in Dignity. It spread across YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and even TikTok. Viewers left thousands of comments. This made me cry. Shame on those who mocked her. Where can I send her a gift? God bless that doctor forever. And at the center of it all was a simple message. Never look down on anyone. You don't know their story. and you don't know what God is about to do next. Back at the restaurant, things had changed. Tony Obasi was gone. The staff were retrained. The management posted a public apology and launched a new initiative called Serve with Honor, offering weekly food donations to the elderly and poor in Enugu. But Tony? No one really saw him again. Some said he traveled to Aka to look for another job. Others said he changed his name and started selling electronics. But the world had already seen who he was when he thought no one important was watching. Meanwhile, in New Artisan Estate, life continued softly. Dr. Ifeoma came by often, sometimes with her kids on video call, other times with jollof rice and mangoes. Peace kept the house glowing, and Mama Folake? She smiled more. She laughed easily. She even started writing letters again, one to Emeka that she kept tucked in her Bible. One quiet evening, she said something to Ifeoma that stayed with her forever. Some people wait for family to come through blood, but God sent mine through a promise. Ifeoma held her hand. And in that moment, the necklace between them stopped being a memory. It became a symbol of love carried across time, of dignity rediscovered, of a second chance for both the giver and the gifted. The rains came gently that Saturday morning in New Artisan Estate. Not the loud, thunderous type, but a quiet drizzle that washed dust from roofs and kissed hibiscus petals awake. Inside her sitting room, Mama Folake lit a small candle and whispered a prayer. It was the anniversary of her daughter's passing. Every year, she had cried alone. But this time, things were different. A knock sounded at the door. Peace opened it to let Dr. Ifeoma Amba in, dressed in a soft blue gown, her hair covered with a simple scarf. She carried a small basket. They sat together in silence for a while, the kind of silence that holds more love than words ever could. Then Ifeoma reached into the basket and pulled out a framed picture. It was Amaka, a larger version of the school photo, smiling, radiant, captured forever in her prime. I thought it should sit above your bed, Mama, Ifeoma said, her voice gentle, so you never forget the joy she gave. Mama Folake took the frame with both hands, holding it like something sacred. She was light, she whispered. Even in her pain, she never stopped shining. They stood and walked into the bedroom together. Ifeoma carefully hung the frame on the wall just above the neatly made bed. Then she stepped back and held Mama Folake's hand. And now, she said, she watches over both of us. Later that evening, after dinner, they sat outside on a bamboo mat under the stars. The air was fresh from the rain. The moon sat like a quiet witness overhead. I've been thinking, Ifeoma began, of starting something in her name. Mama Folake turned. In Amaka's name? Yes, a foundation for girls, orphans, street children, young women who need help staying in school. Just like I once did, I'll call it the Amaka Folake Promise Fund. The old woman gasped. Promise, just like the one you made to her. Ifeoma nodded. And this time, we'll make it reach beyond just the two of us. In the months that followed, the foundation was launched. Mama Folake became its honorary matron. She sat with girls during meetings, shared her story at schools, and wore her old necklace with pride, no longer as a relic of pain, but as a medal of victory. Children who had no mothers called her Grandma Folake. Some brought her letters. Others brought her mangoes. She received love from people she'd never met. And through it all, Ifeoma never stopped coming, never stopped honoring her promise. One evening, after the foundation's first scholarship was awarded to a teenage girl named Chisholm, Mama Folake whispered to Ifeoma while holding her hand tightly, I used to think God forgot me, my daughter. But now I know He was preparing you. Ifeoma smiled with tears in her eyes, and He was preserving you. They hugged as the sun melted into the clouds beyond Enugu's skyline. And just like that, what began with shame at a restaurant ended with legacy, love, and a life reborn from dignity.